When the surrounding Gentile peoples heard that the altar and sanctuary had been restored, they became very angry. Determined to destroy all of Jacob's descendants living among them, they began to persecute and kill the people. Judas fought against Esau's descendants at 𝗕𝗶𝗯 in Idumea because they were attacking the Israelites there. The Idumeans were thoroughly humiliated in defeat and were stripped of their valuables and weapons. Judas also avenged the evil deeds of the sons of Bean, who constantly threatened travelers by ambushing them along the roads. Judas chased them into their fortified towers and surrounded them. Then, calling a curse down on them, he set the towers on fire and burned them down with everyone inside. Next, Judas crossed over to attack the Ammonites and found a strong and numerous army under the command of Timothy. After fighting many battles with them, he routed them and cut them to pieces. He captured the town of Jazer and its nearby villages. Then he returned to Judea. Now the Gentiles in Gilead banded together against the Israelites in their area and plotted to destroy them. But these Israelites fled to the fortress of 𝗕𝗏. From there they sent this letter to Judas and his brothers: "The Gentiles around us have banded together to destroy us. They are preparing to come and capture the fortress where we have taken refuge. Timothy is the leader of their army. Please come at once and rescue us from them, for many of us have already been killed or wounded. All our fellow Israelites in the land of Tob are dead. Their wives and children have been taken captive, and their goods have been confiscated. The enemy has killed almost 1,000 men there." While this letter was being read, other messengers came from Galilee with their clothes torn. They had similar news. "Everyone in Ptolemais, Tyre, and Sidon has joined with the Gentiles of Galilee to destroy us." When Judas and the people heard these reports, they held a large meeting to decide how to help their fellow Israelites who were being attacked by their enemies. Judas said to his brother Simon, "Choose your men and rescue your fellow Israelites in Galilee. Jonathan and I will go to Gilead." He left Joseph son of Zechariah and Azariah, a leader of the people, to guard Judea with the rest of the army. He gave them these instructions: "Take charge of these people, but do not begin fighting the Gentiles until we return." 3,000 men were assigned to accompany Simon into Galilee, and Judas led 8,000 men into Gilead. Simon invaded Galilee, and after fighting many battles, he completely crushed the Gentile forces there. He chased them all the way to the gate of Ptolemais. Almost 3,000 Gentiles were killed, and Simon captured all their belongings. He led the Jews who were in Galilee and in Arbatah, together with their wives, children, and possessions, to Judea with great celebration. Judas Maccabeus and his brother Jonathan crossed the river Jordan and marched for 3 days into the wilderness. There they met the Nabateans, who received them peacefully. The Nabateans told them all that had been happening to the Israelites in Gilead. They related that many had been trapped in Bozrah, Bosor, Alema, Chaspho, Macht, and Carnaim, all of which were large and fortified cities. They said that Jews were also being held captive in the other towns of Gilead. The enemy planned to attack these towns the next day, and then they would capture and destroy all the Jews at once. Judas and his army quickly marched back by the wilderness road to Bozrah and captured that town. They killed every male by the sword, carried away all the goods, and burned the town. They left Bozrah by night and marched until they came to the fortress of 𝗕𝗏. At dawn, they saw a great number of soldiers carrying ladders and battering rams to attack the fortress and capture the Jews. Judas saw that the fight had just begun and that the battle cry of the people was going up to heaven with trumpet blasts and shouts. He shouted to his army, "Fight today for your fellow Israelites." Then Judas's men advanced from behind the enemy in 3 companies while sounding trumpets and crying aloud in prayer. When the men of Timothy's army realized it was Maccabees, they fled from him. Judas's army inflicted a crushing defeat, killing about 8,000 men that day. Judas then turned to Ələmah, assaulted and captured it, killed all the males, carried away all the goods, and burned it. From there he marched on and captured Chasphon, Maked, Bosor, and the rest of the towns of Gilead. Following his defeat, Timothy assembled another army and set up camp just across the stream bed from Raphan. Judas sent scouts to survey the enemy camp, and they returned to report, "All the Gentiles from the region have gathered to form a great army under Timothy's command. They have also hired Arab reinforcements. They are camped on the opposite side of the stream bed, ready to fight you." So Judas went forward to attack them. As Judas approached, Timothy said to his officers, "If Judas comes to the stream bed and crosses it, we will not be able to resist him. He will certainly get the better of us. But if his courage fails and he sets up camp on the other side, we will cross over and crush him." When Judas came near the stream, he stationed the officers of the army on the bank, ordering them, "Don't let anyone stay behind to set up camp. Send everyone into battle." Judas himself led the charge across the stream bed, and his entire army followed. They routed the Gentile forces, who fled to the temple area in 𝗠𝗰𝗰𝗯𝗲𝗀, discarding their weapons as they ran. But Judas captured 𝗠𝗰𝗰𝗯𝗲𝗀 and burned out the temple area with everyone in it. So 𝗠𝗰𝗰𝗯𝗲𝗀 was subdued, and all resistance against Judas ceased. Then Judas gathered together all the Israelites who were in Gilead, from the least to the greatest, with their wives, children, and possessions, and he led this large company back to Judea. Along the way they came to Ephron, a large city that was strongly fortified. They could not go around it, either to the right or left, so they had to go through it. But the people in the city shut themselves in and barricaded the gates with stones. Judas sent them a message of peace, saying, "Let us pass through your territory to get to our own. No one will harm you. We will only pass through on foot." But they refused to open the gates for him. So Judas issued orders for all his troops to set up where they were. His army prepared for battle and attacked the city all that day and through the night until the city fell to them. Judas and his men killed every male by the sword, carried away their possessions, and completely destroyed the city. Then they marched through the city over the bodies of the dead. They crossed the river Jordan to the great plain near Beth-shan. Judas hurried the stragglers and encouraged the people all the way until they reached Judea. Then with joy and gladness, they climbed Mount Zion, where they offered burnt offerings, for none of them had been killed, and all had returned safely. Now while Judas and Jonathan were in Gilead and their brother Simon was in Galilee outside Ptolemais, Joseph son of Zechariah and Azariah, commanders of the soldiers in Judea, heard of the victories and the battles that had been fought. They said, "Let's also make a name for ourselves by fighting the Gentiles around us." So Joseph gave orders to his troops, and they marched against Jamnia. Gorgias and his men came out of the town to fight them. Joseph and Azariah were routed, and they were chased all the way to the borders of Judea. About 2,000 Israelites were killed that day. This great defeat took place because they did not listen to Judas and his brothers. They thought they would do brave deeds themselves, but they were not from the family through whom deliverance was to come to Israel. Valiant Judas and his brothers, however, were greatly honored by all Israel, and their fame spread among the Gentiles. People rallied around and cheered for them. Judas and his brothers marched out and attacked the descendants of Esau in the land to the south. They captured Hebron and its surrounding towns, destroying their fortifications and burning down the perimeter towers. As Judas and his army headed for Philistia, they passed through Marisa. That day some priests were killed in battle, for they had foolishly decided to make a name for themselves in battle. Judas turned and marched to Azotus in Philistia. He tore down their altars, burned the statues of their gods, and carried away their possessions. Then he returned to Judea.